Thank you.
Well, coming up just hours before the deadline to mail absentee ballots to our military men and women serving overseas, we'll take a look at a report slamming the Defense Department for failing to implement a law that requires them to help our troops vote. Stay with us. A new report by the Defense Department's Inspector General slams the Pentagon for failing to help our soldiers overseas vote. A law passed 3 years ago was supposed to make it easier for our overseas personnel to cast their ballots in these elections. But one day before the deadline to get those ballots in the mail overseas, that's tomorrow, the military's watchdog finds that many installations are completely failing to comply with this law. Joining me now, Pete Hegseth, the CEO of Concerned Veterans for America. Pete, so the most disenfranchised group in America will wind up being the military if this turns out to be true. Why aren't they complying with the law that requires them to make it easier for our guys and gals?
Well, it's a matter of priority, and it's a matter of leadership. I just deployed to Afghanistan, and that happened to be right after Don't Ask, Don't Tell was passed. Within months, I got a full briefing about what I could and couldn't do because that was a priority of the leadership to get that done. If they wanted military voting to be emphasized, from 2009 when the MOVE Act was passed that mandated all these changes, to today in 2012, with what our military can accomplish in 3 years, they'd have gotten it done. But instead, you've got 220 voter assistance offices in military complexes around the world, only half of which they could actually find when they went and checked. If DOD or this administration wanted more military members overseas to be voting, they could be mandating, they could be briefings, they could be pushing this out. Instead, we're waiting to the last minute, and we see it in the numbers. The percentages of military members overseas requesting ballots is down from 2008 after the MOVE Act being passed in 2009. It's a travesty, and they are disenfranchised.
The numbers are really low for military service personnel requesting ballots to vote, which is it's not consistent with what we know to be true. I mean, these are patriots. They care. They're invested. They, of all people, have a vested interest in seeing who the commander-in-chief is. And yet the military says, Pete, well, we know we didn't establish a lot of these offices over in, Afghanistan and elsewhere to help our military members get ballots and then send ballots back in. But we didn't have the resources.
Not true. Not true. They had $46 million. We released a video on this week at Concerned Vets for America. $46 million allocated to the Defense Department in fiscal year 2011 alone. The money is there. They've had it. They've had the ability to open these offices. Instead, they say, these young kids, they don't go to offices. They go on Twitter and Facebook, so we're just going to push it out over Twitter. Twitter and Facebook is the answer to the Defense Department on military voting. It is not a solution. They are not prioritizing.
Maybe this is naive of me, but how does that work for a guy or a gal serving in Afghanistan to go to Twitter in his downtime and get a ballot and then send it back in, even though there's no office for him to do that? I mean, shouldn't we be making it as easy as humanly possible for these guys?
Absolutely, and there are organizations out there trying to do that. One of them is the Military Voter Protection Project. If anyone is listening right now who's serving overseas or knows someone serving overseas, heroesvote.org. Heroesvote.org before tomorrow. You can fill out your federal postcard, which both registers you and registers an absentee ballot to be sent out. The question is, Megyn, are these counties and states going to apply the law properly, which tomorrow is the 45-day mark when ballots need to go back. Historically, that's how much time the process takes, because of bureaucracy, for ballots to make it over there. And it's not the first thing a service member is going to do is, quick, I'm fighting the Taliban, let me go fill out my absentee ballot.
Right.
It may take a while for them to finish it. They send it back. It needs to get back in advance for it to be counted. I live in Minnesota. We had an election in 2008 that went one direction by a couple hundred votes. Had they counted military votes, we would have had a different outcome. This stuff has real implications on elections, just like it can in this year, and we need all of our military members overseas to vote.
I want to say that they believe that it's Congress's fault, that the report that talks about the lack of resources says that Congress failed to authorize additional funding to help implement this law, and the Pentagon officials estimate the cost of doing so could exceed $20 million a year. So that's why they say it's sort of been a good faith effort. Do you believe there's something political is going on here, Pete? Because the military, to some extent, seems to favor the Republican candidate.
Yeah, I think there is something political in the sense that there is not an emphasis on this particular demographic because it does happen to cut one way or the other. But ultimately, a lot of the fault here lies on DOD, and I know a lot of the appointees of DOD are political, but the money's there, $46 million for 1 year. So if they need 20, they got twice as much as they needed in order to actually make it happen. It stinks. It sort of reeks of political. Just like another example is the VA backlog, right? The backlog has doubled under this administration, yet General Shinseki, the Secretary of the VA, says this is a good thing. They're actually improving things because of more access. It's smoke screen, it's smoke and mirrors, it's not solutions, and that's why we're pounding the table on it.
All right, Pete, we'll continue to follow it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Megyn.